Yo, what's up, y'all? This is Fat Man Scoop, the undisputed voice of the club, the two-time Grammy Award winner. Let me make this official for you. Fat Man Scoop, Crooklyn Clan, Internets. It's time to go with my dude, Premium Pete. Let's get focused. Let's go, Internets. Let's turn up one time, Premium Pete.
Come on, everybody get set. Let's go. It's the next episode. It's the Premium Pete Show. News, interviews, all of the info. Listen up. It's the Premium Pete Show. If you want the scoop in the low, down low, listen to the show, cause Milk said so. Fuck what you heard, better act like you know. It's the Premium Pete Show.
Internets, welcome back to another episode of the Premium Pete Show. Finally sitting down with somebody who a lot of people say we look like each other. You know, if you look at the pictures, when you see the group picture, or if you just look for Dru Ha, you'll see it, okay? I mean, so many things we could call, you know, it's funny because as you get older and you're in the business and the game and this world that we live in,
yep.
You get, you know, called so many different names. Music executive, manager,
right?
You know, rapper. Don't lie.
That's right.
That's right. We'll get into that. And father and so many things. Internet's welcome Dru Ha to the Premium Pete Show. Man, Dru, as I was doing my own show, now it's about maybe like 2.5 years or whatever, 3 years. I don't even know. I was like, on my list, I had Dru Ha on there. I was like, and sometimes you realize, even like, you know, I had Ralph McDaniels recently, but he was always on the list.
Right.
But I never got to him. And, you know, sometimes scheduling is this and traveling, but I was like, certain people to me, you know, it's like watching the journey, being around, seeing different stuff, you know, having a lot of mutual friends. You know, even like before we started, we're talking off air about Sean Price. Mm-hmm. You know, rest in peace to the legendary Sean Price. You know, Sean Carter is nice, but, you know,
right.
Sean Price is
the best.
The best.
Yeah.
But listen, Dru, welcome, man.
Thank you, man. Well, I appreciate even being on the list, and I appreciate being here.
Of course, man. You know, when we think about, we'll bounce around, but when we think about Sean Price,
mm-hmm.
When is the first time that you ever even met Sean Price?
Man, you're jarring the memory. Think about the first time I met Sean. I definitely met him through Tech and Steel.
Okay.
Smith & Wesson.
Shouts to Tech and Steel.
Yeah, and they put me on that they had another artist, or they were working with other acts, which Top Dog is Steel's brother, DOG, and he was in a group called, you know, the Fab Five. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So. Or they weren't even Fab Five at that point. I'm messing up. I'm going to mess up the history right here.
Okay.
They were at that point. They were Helter Skelter and OGC, but they were recording music together. So Steel told me about them, or Tech. I'll just say Smith & Wesson told me about Helter Skelter,
sure.
And that was my first, you know, like meeting of them. I can't remember it's messed up, but I can't remember the very first time I met them. I remember like early. I remember like we used to do a lot of work out of my apartment. I had a small studio apartment on 12th Street in Manhattan, and the artists would we would just like work out of there during the day. The artists would come to the apartment, and I remember one time Sean was coming to my apartment, and on the buzzer he was looking for Ha. So like, you know, that obviously is not my last name, but he thought that was my last name.
Oh, your first name was Dru and your last name was Ha?
Right? So, and you know how they have the names?
Yeah,
there was no doorman or anything. So he left because he didn't see Dru Ha, and then, you know, whatever. When he came up, we finally figured it out. He probably paid Steel or someone, and when he finally figured it out, he told me that story, and I was definitely laughing from that. That was like, you know, early Ruck. That's how, you know, it was Ruck stages at that point.
You know, when he seen you, did he, like, you know, because Sean Price was very judgmental, funny, you know, but he had over the years, and, you know, I've seen and been in rooms and heard, you know, he had a lot of love and trust for you, and you had a lot of patience with him, and you guys, you know, you knew how to work with somebody like that. But his first impression, like, did he ever tell you, like, you know?
Oh, I'm sure he was like, what the fuck is this? Like, you know, he never told me, but I think that he was one of the first people to tell me not to rap anymore. So you talk about his honesty and his, like, you know, judgment, and then he said it in a way like if it wasn't up to par, then it shouldn't go down. Like, and so early in those stages, I was still rapping. I was an aspiring rapper, although I knew that wasn't going to be my direction. It wasn't like I was totally determined or thought that I was going to, you know, once I got around Buckshot and got around Smith & Wesson and went to studio sessions, it's a whole different ballgame of like what I experienced. But I was on a song, the Black Moon album called "You the Man," and I don't even think Helter Skelter was around at that point. You know, meaning like in the session.
Sure.
So.
Do you remember your part?
Of course, I remember my part. I'll
what
never.
the hell did you say? What the hell did you say?
Don't make me. Don't.
Okay.
Let's just replay it at some point.
I'm gonna add it in. I'll add it in.
Right. I'm a little. I can't. When I listen to it today, I can't believe that that's me. You know what I mean? It takes me back.
What does it make you think of when you hear that?
I mean, it makes me think of my youth. Right.
Yeah.
It makes me think of my passion and my love for the music and like really where it started. It makes me a little sad to the point that I transitioned so much to the business from like the carefree teenager, young adult that I was at that point. Like, because I take it back to teenager as even saying that's how, you know, that's really my introduction to how much I loved and grew up on the music.
Growing up where?
In White Plains, New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mom and dad?
Mom and dad.
And what did mom and dad do?
My mom was a substitute teacher. My father was a lawyer. Yeah.
So has he done any work for you?
Well, rest in peace to my pops. He
I know. You run the marathon. We'll get to that.
I ran the marathon for him. He did, and he was an integral part. All the guys got to meet him. You know, Buckshot and him developed a great relationship. He helped us very early on with. He wasn't a music attorney. He was a real estate attorney, but he learned the music quickly.
Sure.
And one of our first major deals was with Priority Records, Brian Turner, and that whole West Coast. You know, everything that was going on there. And my father actually played like an integral role in helping us negotiate and do that deal. He flew out to L.A. with me and Buck, and there's a real funny story there. Is that. You know, my dad's a punctual dude. He's never experienced the music business on any level, and he was meeting us on a plane to go to Los Angeles, and he boarded the plane. Me and Buck weren't even in the airport yet. Like, we literally, there was no texting, cell phones, nothing at this point. He thought the only thing he could do was get on the plane, and that we, of course, would be there. And Buck and I are doing the OJ through the parking lot, through everything to get on that plane. And when I finally got on the plane, I saw my father. I mean, you know, what must have been going through his mind that he was about to fly out to L.A. by himself. And we, you know, we got to L.A. That part went well, but, you know, Buck that was always Buck. He was always late. He was always like pushing the limit. But I could, you know, me and my dad, like when I saw him on the plane, I knew he wanted to just. He wanted to.
What do you got me doing here?
Yeah, and strangle my neck right on the spot. But he composed himself. He had his drink. We flew out to L.A. We got picked up in a limo. And I think all those things were kind of like, he was like, oh, wow, this is real. This isn't like my son talking about a little hobby.
Yeah, sure.
I was probably 21, 22 at the time. And
what were you doing down in L.A.?
We were going to meet with Priority Records.
Okay.
I probably was actually a little bit older. Maybe I was 23, 24. But we got to the hotel. We were staying in like, you know, some like music industry spot on Hollywood, and Heavy D ended up getting in the elevator with us. And my dad, he knew the songs because that's all I would play in the car or whatever. Sure. And we told him that was Heavy D, and he was like, "Oh, that's diddly diddly." We're like, "Yeah, Dad, that's Heavy D." So yeah, my father was was involved. We learned quickly that it wasn't going to be for him, and then that we got other attorneys along the way pretty quickly. He also was developing a sickness at the time. He came down with Alzheimer's, and even in my talkings and dealings with him in the early stages of him being diagnosed, I realized he was losing it a little bit. Like when you have a disease like that, it's not something that you notice right away. It's just very small things. And still being very young, I'm looking at my father like the know-it-all. I'm going to defer to him in terms of, especially when it came to the legal. So as he's breaking down contracts to me, and then I would ask certain questions, and I'd be like, wait a minute, I don't know if what he's saying, I feel like he's taking me in a circle, or if it's not totally the way that I think it should be. And I started questioning him more and more, would lead to some frustration on my part, because now we're on the phone for hours talking through things that I felt we could have talked through in 15, 20 minutes. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't even thinking that it was a disease. I was just thinking man, maybe this isn't for him, the music side of it. So, we transitioned away from him a bit, as he knew we were good and we were set up in that deal. But the guys, Smith & Wesson and Buck, they definitely helped and developed a relationship with him too. That to this day, if you would see them and ask them about him, I'm sure they'd have good memories and fond things to say about him.
That's important. I remember, you running the marathon when your pops passed. Like, I remember you training. If anyone wants to look on YouTube, there's always a classic, legendary, where Sean Price and Dallas Penn were preparing you for the marathon, but just on some hood shit,
Oh, man, I love that. I love that video. I love all those things that me and Sean were like, we were early, right? And those were like early in terms of like what was happening on the internet and webisodes and those type of like series that could have been developed. But every time something happened, we always found a way to put our spin on it, and like the juxtaposition, because you said it earlier, and I don't know what I kind of understand where you were going with it, of like, what did he think of me? I think like after, and this goes for all those guys, like after they got to know me a little bit, I think what they liked most about me was that I was in my lane. I was from White Plains. I wasn't trying to say that I was from Brooklyn or that I was, doing anything more than what I was capable of doing. And that, I think, was like, what was recognized. Would we have been friends if we didn't come together to form a business and go into business with one another? Most likely, no way, right? Like, our paths wouldn't have crossed. We wouldn't have had the same things in common, most likely, outside of the music. And, we probably just, it wouldn't have been a match. But when you come together for business and when you come together for work, you can develop like real deep friendships.
Sure, and you did.
Understandings, yeah, and that's what happened over the years. And Sean's honesty and judgmentalness, like, all those things just developed, and those are the things that I loved and I loved his brutal honesty. To this day, when I get dressed, I'm thinking about what Sean would say.
Yeah. What the fuck you wearing, Drew?
Yeah, I have these shoes where he'd be tight, that my pants were a little tighter right now, but he, that was the trend. He never had the body for it anyway, so he'd just be mad that he couldn't do that.
There's another legendary Duck Down YouTube video where Sean steals Christmas. It's on YouTube, internet. If you never seen it before, just go Google Sean Price Christmas. And there's a video. Isn't there a story that I remember you had to trick him to do that?
I had to pay him.
Yeah.
I had to pay him to join Twitter.
Tell that.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Because he was amazing. First of all, he was amazing on Twitter. Once he got on there, he used to block people. People used to ask for him to block him. Like, people were proud to get blocked by Sean P.
Yeah, this was all in, like, I really wrote, when he passed away, I wrote a eulogy.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, it was intense. Like, honestly, I look back on it and I'm a humble dude, but I'm impressed with what I wrote, because it was like, there was such a story to the eulogy and the way that it flowed. And I only had like a couple of days to get it together in terms of it. But a lot of these, like, I would tell the stories, like what you mentioned. Like, it was just such an amazing person that whatever it was, he kind of went the opposite. Where everyone was trying to get more followers, Sean was like, he'd block you. He didn't care. Yeah. He blocked me. I'd be blocked for like a month at a time. Yeah. I'd be like, Sean, it'd be to your benefit if I was unblocked, because there might be people trying to fuck out of it. Like, so whatever. And then people would come to me and they'd ask, could I speak to him to get them unblocked? And then he'd be like, you a bitch ass. You're going to Dru. Like, you're going to Dru thinking that he can get you up. Now you're both blocked. Like, if I would bring someone up, then that's when he would block me. But yeah, I had to pay him to go on Twitter because I knew how funny he would be. I knew how great of a platform it would be for him. I knew how he needed the promotion. It was like a marketing tool.
Sure.
Again, in the very beginning times, right? It was probably MySpace and Twitter. There wasn't much else. So he first like 6, 7 months, 8 months of doing it, everyone was on there. He wouldn't do it. And then finally I just said, look, I'm going to make this part of your publicity budget. Instead of giving it to a publicist, we'll pay you. And I worked out a deal with them. It was, I don't know what I paid him. It was a couple $1,000s. It wasn't ongoing. He wanted me to pay him monthly, and I was like, no, motherfucker, look, I'm going to pay you one time. And if you stop posting, then, I'm going to have to figure something else out. But once he got on, I knew he was going to love it, and he did. And he made it a world of his own, and he made it a business. It made it a business for himself, because I always had the, since we set up the Twitter for him, I always had his feed. So the direct message, like he wouldn't even remember or know, but like I would see all the DMs coming in. That guy got so many features through his DM, and he would never tell me, of course. Like he would never say, hey, here, as my manager, here's your percentage, or so I saw so much business go down through the Twitter, and I'm glad it worked out for him. And, you know, obviously to this day, we still use it as a platform for him.
Yeah, yeah. And the album he released, that Bernadette, and shouts to Bernadette and family, has done well. And a lot of merch, you know, people are buying, supporting. Yeah. And you just recently had
we did a show for us around his birthday. You know, Bern is always doing something, and we're constantly talking to Bernadette about new ideas and new ways to kind of, you know, create and keep the legacy alive. And it's fortunate that he left a lot of music. You know, there was a lot of drives and a lot of unreleased music. Like we were about to put out songs in the CHEA Price as a mixtape, whether he passed or not. Like that was the plan. That album was coming out, and it was just so. A lot of people thought like, oh, we just whipped the mixtape together 2-3 weeks after he passed. And it was like, no, that shit was ready. He had turned it in and it was ready to go. What we did do is like get all the packages and all of the, you know, custom things that you could buy with it. And of course we took advantage of it for Bernadette, and everything that we did was in conjunction with Bernadette. It wasn't like we ever did a project and told her about it afterwards. It was like everything was in tandem.
Keep the legacy alive. You know?
Yeah, and he was a big part of Duck Down's business too. Ruck Down. It was the resurgence of Duck Down. He gave us new life in terms of even like attracting new artists and keeping us in the mix. There's so many things to like when you have an artist that's starting to move.
Sure.
You know, and he was the one that figured out how to kind of like get out of the 90s and get out of. He didn't want us to present him as Helter Skelter. He didn't want us to present him as Ruck. Like he wanted to be Sean Price, and he kind of showed me, you know, what was possible if you like, you know, try something new or just do something different. So it was a big, you know, a bigger loss as a friend. I love Sean.
Sure.
He, like as everyone did. I mean, I had a very unique and special relationship with him. He made me laugh goddamn near every day. He made me laugh when I was in my maddest moments. Like he would always find a way. You know, and he was also tough as nails, so like he could dead a lot of problems for me quickly. You know, that would never be my style, but like when push came to shove, he would shove. You know.
Yo, you know it's so funny when you say that. I just remembered when we went up to Hot 97 a couple of years ago with Combat Jack Show, about 5 years ago, maybe even 6. We were talking about minors versus majors. I don't know if you remember this conversation.
Of course.
And I brought up something about Duck Down or something about like, you know, that it being a sausage fest. I was like saying, right? Right? And
I remember that.
Buckshot.
Buck didn't like that, right?
Didn't like that.
Right, I remember that.
And, yo, he started tweeting some shit or whatever, and he was very upset. Yo, he was threatening me and shit. And I remember I called Sean Price, and he's like, yo, I already took care of that shit. Don't even worry about it. And I'm like, what? And he like got us on the phone, and he was like, you know, me and Buck became real cool after that, you know, doing a bunch of things and staying in touch with each other. But I remember but the way they explained it to you know, the way it was transformed, like, I didn't mean it like that. I was just explaining of what I have experienced.
It was a sausage fest.
No, I know, but
fuck.
But the way it was.
No, Buck's a firecracker, man. Buck is a firecracker, and it's totally different than Sean Price personality.
Sure.
You know. Was so as like Ruck, Sean was a funny dude, but he wasn't I know he can be clownish and to make you laugh in like clownish ways, but he was far from a clown. Like
Sure.
How smart he was and how knowledgeable he was, and that was the other thing. Like I think he always came from a position of fairness. Like when I was saying push or shove, he would shove. But it had to be, he had to see your reason to. I wouldn't just be able to tell him something. And that's not my style anyway. Like I very rarely would
Sure.
go to those measures. But I'm just saying, like, if I was telling him a problem and he disagreed with it from how he saw that maybe I was the cause of the problem, or maybe he would let you know that too. It wasn't just offense, and he was like on my side all the time. And I think that kind of, you know, is what made him special too. Is it was like he would see something and say, look, this is the fair way to probably, you know, solve it. And if we can't get it done like that, that's when, you know, he would escalate. But Buck, you know, Buckshot is a ball of energy, and if he didn't like it right or wrong, like, you know, Buck is coming with that fury.
Yeah, I remember that shit. I mean, even I'm thinking back too. You got me reminiscing, but I'm thinking back when I remember Sean used to tell me to, oh, you go to Drew's office, like find out about your snacks. Remember he used to ask about like what type of snacks you have. Like,
He would tell you to ask me.
yeah, some shit like if you had snacks in the office, you know. But let's take it back to even you talk about Buckshot.
Yeah.
And you being the co-founder of Duck Down, you know, what's the exact entity? Is it Duck Down Records? Is it Duck Down Music? Is it Duck Down?
So we changed it over the years for various reasons, but it started as Duck Down Enterprises. Well, actually started as Duck Down Management. That was the first Duck Down company.
And that was between you and Buckshot.
Me and Buck. And then we created Duck Down Enterprises, which was going to become the music umbrella, like to do different deals for different artists. So Smith & Wesson was the first group signed under Duck Down Management. It's like a management client, but they were signed to Nervous Records, as was Black Moon. And then we created Duck Down Enterprises, and that's who we did like a production deal with Priority Records with. And we signed Helter Skelter and OGC to Duck Down Enterprises. And then as the years went on and we had to like shift the business model a little bit, we kind of dissolved that company and created Duck Down Music. Everyone always called it Duck Down Records. We never, ever called it Duck Down Records, maybe on a few T-shirts. Well, it was Duck Down Enterprises, and then it went from that to Duck Down Music. Maybe on some shirts and things like that, we used Duck Down Records. But we always felt like it was. We knew that the game was shifting and changing, even though it hadn't happened yet. We kind of felt like it wasn't just always going to be records. Like it was going to be other formats. So. Big deal.
Yeah, no. You know, they always try to hold you saying that you missed the opportunity to sign the one and only Marshall Mathers, Eminem.
Yeah, man.
You know, how the hell did that even go down?
So we saw M at a Lyricist Lounge showcase. Smith & Wesson were...
Where was this? In New York?
In New York. I don't remember the venue. But Smith & Wesson were hosting it. They weren't performing. And M was performing, and he got up on stage, and I remember I was on stage because Smith & Wesson it was a small stage, but I was on the side, and he got up on stage, and his dad didn't start playing right away, and the crowd was hostile. Like, you know, it's not kind of like it is today. I think it's a lot easier today for an artist to perform, or crowds don't boo as easily. It was more 8 Mile-ish back then. You know,
sure.
Right? He's basing the movie on something, and that shit was real. His dad didn't start right away. It was a predominantly black crowd. So, you know, there weren't nearly as many accepted white MCs back then. Right? That's also like a little bit of okay, white boys on stage, what's he going to do? The crowd started to rumble a little bit, a couple of heckles started, and then the DAT just kicked in. And he went ballistic, right on the spot, like da-da-da-da, you know, Eminem classic style. And I know Shucky was also on the other side of the stage.
Shucky was from Duck Down.
Shucky from Duck Down. I was like, get his number. And I just told Shucky to get his number. Like, I motioned for it. And he did. And a couple of days later, Paul Rosenberg and M came up to our offices on 18th Street, and we had them in the office. And, you know, we started talking to them about a deal, and, you know, Buck loved them. And we tried to get it done. But the way it was for us is that earlier I said a production deal, right? Because we weren't really a true we thought we were, but really all we were was a logo in someone else's office. We had to go to them for permission to sign acts. We had to go to them for money. They funded our overhead. Like, when Priority went away, we went away. So we had to go to them, and we did. We sent a proposal saying, look, this is the artist, and we want to sign them. We had a certain amount of money that we were automatically allowed to draw from that they couldn't say no to. It was like $150,000. Back then, back then that actually wasn't a lot of money to sign an artist. Today, it would be a pretty decent deal in the indie world or whatever. But he wanted more right off the bat, like, because he was signed to some other production company, and they knew that they were going to have to take care of them, and they also knew they had something special, and they wanted more. And we went to try to go above and beyond what they were asking for, and that caused like a holdup in the Priority office, and they were like, it's the fourth quarter, you guys just signed some other groups. Like, you know, these are the messages that we were getting back. But it's easy for me. I tell this story a lot. I'm sure some people might have heard me say it before, but it'd be easy for me to blame it on Priority and be like, they messed it up. It was their fault. The truth is that, and this is for young people or whoever else is listening that you're going at it, when you want to get something done and you believe in it and that's what you want, you find a way. And as quick as I might have got a letter or something saying, no, you can't do this right now, I should have been on a plane to LA. I should have been knocking on the president's door, priority. I should have been, hooping and hollering louder than not letting it go. Like, you want to do something, find a way to get it done. So I don't blame priority. I'm just telling you the story of like,
sure.
kind of what happened. And we stayed in touch with Paul. They were considering a few offers at the time, and we stayed in touch with Paul, all through the process. We were going to actually try to help manage him once we couldn't get the deal done, signed for him, and Paul was focusing on his legal career. And then, I told Paul, hey, maybe we can do management. And we said, let's give it a shot. Paul called me back like a month later and said, look, I think I'm going to shift from legal to management. Maybe we'll do it together, and it kind of dissipated like over time. So again, my fault. Letting something like that go away. I also tell a funny story of like, I remember a phone call where it was like Eminem was on one line, like the receptionist saying, Dru, you have Eminem, and Louisville is on line too. Louisville's a MC from OGC's. And, I took the Louisville call. When I clicked back to M, he was gone. He didn't want to wait, whatever. So those are like those decisions of Louisville, Eminem, Louisville, Eminem, like which call I take. Now to my backing, Louisville was already an artist that was, was going down for Fab Five at that point, and that's where my allegiance and loyalty would have been aligned with at that moment. But I spoke to M a few times during that process, and we tried to help, and it didn't move quickly for them in the Interscope building. Paul was, I remember frustration from Paul of like, yo, we want to do this, we want to do that, we're not getting the things that we need yet. And I was like, in due time. And it becomes that waiting process, like as you're a signed artist on a major label to the point where they're going to move on you. And it's tough to fill in those gaps of like, it's easy to look back on it, but when you say, no one's moving on you for 9 or 10 months and an artist wants to do things, if you're a manager that's good at what you're doing, you're finding ways to occupy that artist's time. And, again, I didn't do enough to keep that relationship moving and going, but it is all a true story. It's not like some people will say, oh, I almost had this, and I'm like, no, M says it on some records.
Yeah, didn't he drop your name in there or something like that? Or duck down? What did he say?
Yeah, he said, he dissed the labels that he felt weren't sincere, and he said before I signed to something, I almost signed with Duck Down, and he says it, and he bigged us up on the first album line because we were always honest with him. Like we always came back and we showed him the letters that we were getting from Priority. Like we were like, look, we want to do this, but our hands are tied, and it wasn't like he didn't feel like we put the effort in.
Do you think it was just money? Like if you had 150, would 300 would have done it?
Yeah. If we had the money because we knew what their number was, and if we had it and we did it, we probably would have went to contract with it. So
have you seen him recently over there?
I saw him we went to his house. We went to his studio, not to his house. He had Buckshot and myself come to his house maybe 4 or 5. When he made that record, he made I Got You Open over, and he invited me and Buck to come. He didn't really care about me, but he invited Buck to come to the session to actually do the hook. And Paul, of course, knew that like I would go, so I got to spend some time. I've actually spent a whole day with him out there. We watched football. It was a Sunday. The football games were on, and we reminisced and we talked a little bit. But the first time that I had saw him, even going back after all the success, is one time I was at a party for it was either for Interscope or for something that he did with a car company, and we were all in the same place, and I was in the bathroom, and I'm using the bathroom, and I guess M and the bodyguard or whatever come in, and they wouldn't let anyone else come into the bathroom, but I was already in the bathroom. I was already in. So
the taking a piss.
Right. So the bodyguard goes back out to the front door, and Eminem, he thinks that he locked down I guess he didn't see me or whatever.
Yeah.
He thinks he locked down the whole bathroom, and that's just me and M in the bathroom. And I'm sure he would never remember this, but of course I would never forget it. And he, he was like, wait a minute. He's like, what's up, man? I'm pissing, so I can't dab him up. Like all the awkward things are there. And I was like, yo, congrats on everything. Like that's all I could say to him, but we're still in the bathroom, and I just kind of said congrats and kept it moving.
That's classic.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's take a quick break. Internet's don't go nowhere. We're sitting here with the one and only legendary Dru Ha. Be right back. CHEA.
Yo, check this out, man. It's Prodigy from the infamous Mobb Deep, the head nigga in charge, HNIC. You know what I'm saying? Repping that Queens, New York. Chilling, man, right now, man. Just kicking it, you know what I mean, with my homie Premium Pete. And this is the Premium Pete Show. Keep it locked right here. Don't go nowhere. Real shit, one.
Internets, and we're back sitting here with Dru Ha, my guy, man.
Yeah.
Stories for days. It's amazing. The Eminem story is, you know, it's crazy when you think about. One thing I really like about the journey of you, particularly, is how you talk about. Look, you know, it seems like it taught you something. You know, your hands were tied a little, right? You think about it, your hands were tied, but you're not saying it like, you know, you're saying it like, you know, I like, you know, I could have did this, I could have did that, I could have did. You know, a lot of people don't think like that. A lot of people blame other people. A lot of people have different feelings about things, and the way you have that open mind is something that I like, you know? Yeah,
I mean, look, it's definitely one where you look back and you think it would be a life-changing type of... That's like winning the lottery, you know? So who knows how the story would have gone, and we were also talking off air, like just in terms of what type of career it would have, you know, would have it followed the same trajectory if he was with us versus how Dr. Dre introduced him and the powers that be at Interscope and Jimmy and all the beautiful minds, you know, that came together. But of course, I always believe in the MC, and I think that the true artist will always rise to the top.
And it did. I remember, I think it was a Funkmaster Flex tape. The first song I heard Eminem was that song, If I Get Locked Up Tonight. Yeah. You know, I think that was what it was, right? It was like, that shit was so, I remember he came out the gate, I was like, who the fuck is this? It had a little like funny shit in it, you know, where he's like, you know, like, I'll stab you in the head, and you know, like,
see that, and you couldn't tell right at the time.
I couldn't tell if it was a joke.
Exactly. Was it niche? Was it like comedy? Was it that? I remember playing a demo of his because we had demo. I don't know what the demos were, but I remember playing it for my younger brother who now runs Duck Down. I'm sure we'll get into that in a bit, but. He at the time was 14 or 15, so I played it for him. Like, what do you think? And it was things about like, I'll take the eraser and bop you. It was totally different than Smith & Wesson and Black Moon and Helter Skelter, the things that, you know, was making part of what my career was becoming. So it was a total shift, and that's, you know, when we talked about it earlier of saying like, how hard do you go after something? Maybe that's was some of the hesitation too. It was like not knowing what it was going to become.
Sure. Who would have known? You know, you even spoke about, I don't know if you want to bring that up, but you spoke about, you know, like Mac Miller, working with Mac Miller. When did you meet Mac?
We met Mac, it wasn't so much meeting Mac, it was more like trying to sign him. And because I said M wasn't my, like, here I am sitting here trying to, you know, brag about my failures, or the almost moments. And I think that too often in the business, you do run across people, oh, I know him and I did that. But I always kind of joke around about it, saying like, when I'm telling these stories, like they're really, really real. Like they really almost happened. And with Mac, we knew his manager, Benji, and we knew what they were doing with Wiz Khalifa at the time. And we tried to, like, you know, meet with them, and we did. We met with Benji first and just said, look, this is something that we feel we can do, that we can help you with. And he had a little bit of bad taste in his mouth from the indie deal that he had just did. I won't mention the labels, but he had an indie deal set up with Wiz where they weren't really getting what they thought they should get, and that kind of tainted his, you know, feeling about doing another indie project. And they ended up just, you know, creating their own company from that point, which became Rostrum. Not to say that we spawned that, but we were in the conversations, and we gone to contract, or we had sent a bunch of proposals out, and we were playing at that point, you know, ping pong. It was going back and forth of trying to get the deal done. So I think for us it was important that we identified certain things. This was pre-YouTube. This was really internet, of when you're discovering music at that point. It wasn't just as easy as it is today for us to all agree and look at something and say, oh, it's got 1 million views. Oh, he's got 800,000 followers. We can all agree on that today. Back then, you did have to use a little more judgment. You did have to, you know, someone had to put you up on something. You did have to go see it. And I remember that Sean liked Mac, and that was a part of it, obviously, for us, that he was a fan too, because I trusted Sean's judgment. I'm like, if Sean liked something, like, you know, I know he only liked very official MCs and certain styles.
People.
Yeah, and people. So No, there's a few more. I go down the line, but we had.
Is almost? Are we staying on the almost? There are other people.
There are others, but whatever. We'll
All right, we'll
move
go
from
back.
that.
At the end, we'll ask for one more of who it is. But this is not only about that. You know, what I do want to go over is back then. You think of the deals that you were signing with artists, or the deals that you were getting thrown towards you from record companies.
Mm-hmm.
How much different is it today? Like, because you evolved, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you think about it. Like, you know, there's some people that couldn't evolve and got left behind.
Yeah.
How much different were they? Like, were they tremendous money back then? Like, was it, you know, how did you evolve from, like, how were they back then and how did you evolve from now?
Well, the independent scene, because we were always independent,
Sure.
and it wasn't. I always say this to people too. It wasn't like we were independent going, yo, because it became like a thing to say like, oh, I'm independent. Like you're independent, motherfucker, because you couldn't get signed to a major. Like that was kind of the lane that we were in. Like we were backed by Priority Records, but we weren't, you know, set up through a Def Jam or through an Interscope. You know, so we were still operating in our own space. But there were more major labels back then, right? They hadn't splintered off yet or consolidated yet to that point. They were just like kind of all over the place. So there were more deals to be had. And when the music started to sell, when hip hop really started to take off, the deals in 95, 96, 97, they were massive. You know, you could catch $1 million, $2 million, $3 million deals. Not if you were an independent artist though. So I think that kind of changed a little bit as the music started to, you know, not sell as well. For us, we never relied upon those major label budgets because we never had them.
Yeah.
So we had to like kind of make do with what we had, and it gave us a little bit of an advantage of how to figure out. We thought, like, again, I'm saying we were independent even back then. We truthfully we weren't, right? Because we were funded by Priority up until 1998 or 99. Priority lost its deal. They got folded into Capitol Records, and when they went away, that our funding went away. And so at that point, and like it wasn't until 1999 that we as Duck Down really became a true independent label. But we had learned so much in those years at Priority of, you know, recording budget, marketing budget, manufacturing costs, all the things that go into making a record and putting it out, that we were, you know, well equipped to kind of like figure it out from that point forward. I also learned as quick as I went from like a beautiful office on 18th Street, we had a whole floor. It was like the penthouse, nothing like super crazy, but it was a beautiful office. And the day that deal expired, I was back in my apartment I took the copy machine and put it in my kitchen. So I went from like, you know, having 7, 8 offices on 18th Street to going back into my apartment. My staff, I had to let go of like almost 3/4 of the staff because they were supporting the payroll. The artists, I only had a little bit of time with them because they had contracts with us, but we had to fulfill those contracts to be able to let them record. So like everything came crashing down pretty quickly. And that's, you know, as we started to rebuild it, that's when we took everything we knew and said, look, we're never going to be in this position again where we're relying on someone to be our, you know, if they go, we go. Like you can't operate a business like that. And for me, that was the wake-up call of like trying to understand and learn how to do it, where we built everything up, where we owned everything, where we could rely on ourselves for funding, do your own manufacturing, and all that you really needed from a record label at that point, which was a different day and age, was distribution. And that was to get you into, you know, the malls and the stores. Sure. And I'm not talking about, like, again, you can't put this conversation to today. It's not, even when you think about the last record stores are like Best Buy, but I'm talking about the days of Sam Goody and the Wiz. And all the chains that were, you know, in the malls. You had to be in the malls throughout the country. So you did need a distribution partner. And it wasn't so easy to get. It wasn't like anyone could just sign up to TuneCore and say, I got distribution.
Was there a lot of money on what were it, CDs and what, records? And
CDs and records and cassettes.
Cassette tapes. Was there a lot of money?
A lot of money. Margins were much different. You know, back then we could calculate almost on $11, $12 a unit. That would be backing out expenses. Like a CD could sell for $16 to $20 depending. Sure. And co-op at that point, like the big retailers weren't beating you up yet for all these discounts. Best Buy was the introduction of trying to drive down the price of a CD. And because they were successful at it, right? Because Best Buy's their motto wasn't so much about music. It was like, buy a refrigerator, buy a television, and while you're doing that, your kids are maybe in the music section, and that's just like extra money for us. They weren't relying on the CD or the cassette to fund their business model, right? So they could afford to just say, you know what, we could just make $1 on a unit, on a CD. We don't need to make this margin that the record stores needed to make. And they started to force where they started to change the pricing, and they brought it way down. And then all the retailers would be like, well, if you're selling it to them for X amount, you got to sell it to us for X amount. And, you know, that game of back and forth of like every retailer wanting it at the same price and wanting discounts, and that just drove the pricing all the way down.
You know, when you done a bunch of deals over the years, back in the day when you closed like I don't know if you remember a moment, you closed a big deal. Did you celebrate? Like, were you into like, I always say that to people because sometimes people like just, you know, they're so busy working, they just put their head down and continue and don't even, you know, celebrate it. Yeah,
the duck down, the first deal with Priority was definitely, well, I don't know if we did anything crazy, but I think we might have done like a little, we did do an office party when we first moved into those offices. Pizzas, beer, had everyone up there. Like, I remember my father was up there.
So when did your father believe it was real? I know he believed it was real when the limo picked him up or whatever and he got on a plane. But what about mom? Because I'm sure they had
I left mom at home.
But I'm sure they had other, you know, they thought you would maybe be some, you know, maybe.
I was in law school.
Okay.
Yeah, I was never in law school. I was taking the LSATs, right? That's what they call the LSATs. LSATs, yeah. And that's when I was interning. At the same time, I was interning for Nervous Records. The same summer, I was studying for the LSATs. And then when I met Buck and things started to like, you know, happen quickly, I decided maybe I'll put taking the test off for a year, and I'll come back to it next year. I'll see how this first year does. But it happened so fast for me from that point that there was like no looking back. And my parents were extremely supportive. Like, my mom would have been my number one fan, still is the number one fan. Like, if it was probably more my dad that was like, you know, let's be careful with what we're doing here. Let me take
because it was new territory.
Yeah,
too.
But my mom was like, just go for it. You know, like she was always supportive that way. And I was fortunate. You know, like I came from a household where, you know, I was able to intern. I was able to make $75 a week and go back and forth from the city and still live at my parents' house and not have to worry about a bill or this or that. Like, those are advantages that I 100% that I had. I get into that with my wife once in a while. She'll test me on that, and I'll say there's no question about it. Like, the ability to, you know, for kids or for young people to be able to do and explore what they're, you know, like without the pressures of like, some kids might not have been able to do that because they might have had to contribute to rent, or they might have had to buy all their own clothing or pay off school bills or do other things that wouldn't allow them to take a $75 a week internship. So I think from that perspective, I had a little more flexibility from. My parents were supporting me in both ways. Like, they were helping me financially, but they were also believing in what I was doing. So they never were steering me in a different direction.
Well, check out how hard this is in parenting, right? Every parent, now that you're a parent, your son's 3 and a half, you know, right? My son's going to be 4. They're around the same age. Again, I was telling my man Isaiah, was saying that we look alike and our kids look alike. I was like, what the hell's going on here? But, you know, if they need me to play Dru Ha's biopic at any time throughout your life, we'll figure it out. But, you know, check this out. We as parents, and I'll tell you, even from having a daughter that's older, your mindset is to do more for your kids than your parents did for you, right? And in the interim, sometimes you spoil them. Because, you know, now don't get me wrong, your parents afforded you the opportunity to, say, just live at their house and possibly, you know, have food in the fridge and you have to worry. You know, it's not like they did, you know, it's not like you had a hot tub running for you when you came home. But it was a great opportunity for you to do that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, as parents, as we are, you know, that's what you want to do for your kids. Right. And you know, sometimes it makes them lazy. Right. When you do more for them, and sometimes, you know, sometimes it hurts them, sometimes it helps them.
I think it's a good point of what you're saying, and even like being able to look back on it. I think that my father, as I would draw the line of, you know, I always had some type of job. Like, I grew up in in a good neighborhood, in a good household with plenty of money, I'm in the suburbs. But my father always instilled, like, you're going to have a job, you're going to have a paper route, you're going to work, you're not sitting at home all summer, you're going to be a counselor, you're going to work at Foot Locker, you're going to do something. So I always had that work mentality of, like, no, even though it was there for me, like, you're still going to earn. You're not going to just sit back and become lazy. Like, that was probably a big, point for them as parents, was to make sure that their children, because I have two brothers as well, wouldn't be lazy. And I think from a parenting aspect, those are things you can look at and say, you want to instill certain values in your children and hope that they'll, be self-driven and that they'll be motivated and become all that they can be.
Pops is a lawyer. Sometimes lawyers are, I don't want to say, sometimes the way they operate is a little bit different. Was Pops like, did you like have a real good relationship with him where he was like very loving or hang out with you or, hug you or, you know what I mean? Like sometimes lawyers are, I say that because, it's like, even I think about like, it's funny, like, rest in peace Reggie and rest in peace to your Pops.
Rest in peace, Reg.
But I think about like, sometimes lawyers, it's like the way, like I was like, they're wired a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're not good parents or they're not people who do it. But sometimes some parents, I always look at it, even, and I speak about this to a lot of people who are on the show. Like my father, great guy. But his father was an Italian guy named Nunzio, who didn't speak no English, had a diaper route when he came here. Like, where you bring in diapers, I guess they clean them, drop them back.
Before Amazon.
Yeah. Big drinker, but never like hugged him. Never. He didn't show him love. So you think about it. My father's a great guy, but then I think about it, and I love him, but he didn't. He really wasn't like that with me. What I mean?
my father had a rule, like I had to give him a kiss goodnight every night. He had to hug me, like to the point where I was like 14 going, damn, I got to kiss him. Like it became a little like, and as he got older, it was like a wet and, my dad
Come here
was,
and give your dad a kiss, Dru.
Yeah, like you're not going to leave this house without giving me a kiss. You're not going to leave that. And I'm already grown. So yeah, he was an affectionate father. He liked to give me a hug. Did
that help? I say that. Do you think like that? Like when you look back at it,
I'm super affectionate with my son right now.
Yeah.
And I'm always questioning myself, like, because I remember the point of like when I became 12 or 13 or 14, like not wanting that, like. You know what I mean? Like not wanting so much affection.
Sure. Like enough. Like drop me off in the back.
Right.
Think about it.
Right. And so I'm always wondering how much time do I have before my son is going to feel like that towards me. But he was a very loving, affectionate father. We had a good relationship. I think I was a little out there in terms of the things that I was doing. Or I was a DJ. I was into, hip hop music from 12, 13, like I'm sure.
What was the first time you heard? Like, what was the first song you heard?
I remember like Sugar Hill Gang in grade school. I remember kids coming in with the record and seeing the, like the light blue and the whatever that was. Was it like a horn or something? It almost looked like some Dr. Seuss shit off the record. And then, Rappers Delight. And I remember kids in my school that just knew every word. And I was just like watching them say, and I wanted to learn every word. I was like, wow, like this really is amazing how they can, say these rhymes. Like, I don't know what it was. But I also grew up in a household. My mother was, she listened to Earth, Wind and Fire and Stevie Wonder and Fleetwood Mac and
Fleetwood Mac's classic.
Yeah, like as much as like the Billy Joels and the Elton Johns, there was always like a soulful element to the music. And there wasn't hip hop in the early 70s. I'm not going to get into that debate of when it started, where it was, and I'm not trying to go that far with it. I'm just saying that those sounds like evolved into a lot of what early hip hop became. And even down to like the Bee Gees and right like Staying Alive and those soundtracks with the dancing. Or what was Saturday Night Fever, right? Like certain movies that influence movement and what was disco, right? Like disco almost before hip hop. So that was already embedded in me. And when I discovered hip hop, it was like it was the natural progression. It wasn't like I just never went towards the rock side or the heavy metal side. Like those things just didn't they didn't click for me. I actually now go back and rediscover more
Metallica?
music. Not heavy metal, but like a lot of light rock and
okay.
You know what I mean? Like songs
Heavy
I would have
metal
heard
was
in my
big back then. I mean,
heavy metal was huge. AC/DC.
Yeah, AC/DC, Metallica. I can never, but some of that shit I can never get into because
Couldn't get into it.
I used to make a joke that, and I'm not saying all was like this, but I remember there was like growing up, it was like hip hop, and then there was like heavy metal, like group like. I used to make a joke and say like some of the songs were like kill my dog, eat my homework, like it was like something like no, it was like very like I don't know.
I
like
never listened.
Mad people.
Yeah, it didn't. I couldn't.
It didn't click with me.
It didn't click with me either. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't understand it. But I say that go back now, and I think that I have a more diverse palette for music today.
Me too.
I hear songs that I used to hear in the dentist office, and I turn that shit off. Now I'm like, yeah, that's a nice song, baby, come back.
Yeah, come back. Yeah.
Like certain songs that now I like the Police, right? Like groups like that, like Sting. Like I didn't appreciate it enough. I didn't appreciate those musicians and those artists then enough. It was almost like I was too cool to even give it a chance because it wasn't hip hop. Like I had to prove that I was only doing this.
Well, I needed to diversify, even like growing up in Brooklyn, like and I was very big into systems and very big into. So we drove around smoking dirt weed all day long. Pounding music, like we had 210s in the back, Rockford Fosgate, Alpine amps. You know what I mean? So like the point I'm making is we had to get to a point where it's like I would listen to DMX, or if I would listen to a certain type of like it depends who. It could have been KRS-One. It could have. I believed every lyric I was hearing.
Right.
So I had to diversify sometimes and go to a more like R&B, you know what I mean, or a Boys to Men to calm down. Like I would listen to X, man. I would catch a felony. I would be speeding. I just would get ramped up,
right?
Because I really believed the life of it. Even Mobb Deep. I remember even like I always say KRS-One, even Love's Gonna Get You. Like I remember when he said, I make about a G a week, fuck school.
Right.
Like I'll never forget that.
Right.
I was like, yo, fuck that. I didn't go back to school for like 5 months.
But see, that's not what he was trying to tell you.
I know, but
it's so crazy though.
But here, I'll give you an example. But I believe like the way he was saying, like you think about it, he said, I'm in junior high with a B+ grade. At the end of the day, I don't hit the arcade. I go from school to my mom's apartment. But he was explaining like, and then how like, because with 1.5, he had 3 pairs of jeans that he shared with his brother. He said, with 1.5 pair of jeans ain't cool, but there's no dollars for nothing else. I got beans, rice, and bread on my shelf. And he said, every day I hear my mother struggling. Right. Now it's time I got to do something. I look for work, I get dissed like a jerk. I do odd jobs, I come home like a slob.
You're doing a cover right now.
But think about it. Here comes Rob. So he goes, I do odd jobs, come home. So he said, so basically as he's moving, and this is what I believed in, like he was like, yo, he did odd jobs, come home like a slob, didn't work for him. So he's like, he said, here comes Rob, he said his gold is chivalry, like, but he says like he gives me $200 for a quick delivery.
Right.
I do it once, I do it twice.
Now he's hooked.
Now there's steak with the beans and rice.
Yeah.
So I believed in that shit. Like I was like, fuck that. I'm selling, and I started selling drugs on a fucking Cannondale.
Yeah, he got to you, man. But the whole message didn't come across, right?
I know the teacher would be upset if I brought
because Chris was ultimately saying like he knew that he had to get you before he could come with the message. So he's like he knew the image that he had to project, right, to pull us all in or pull the youth in for them to listen to the message and the teachings that he was about to come with. I don't think that Chris ever. Look, we won't turn this into a KRS conversation, but because that would get too deep. We actually did a whole project with Chris, which was like another amazing experience of my journey.
The Duck Down?
Yeah, we did a whole album with them. But wait, what was the first album called? Criminal Minded.
Yeah, Criminal Minded.
Right, so Criminal Minded, and he's on the album cover with the gun, right?
Yeah,
right. He's like this with the gun, and I've heard him do interviews of him explaining that like Criminal Minded was that he had to go for the criminal minded to bring them in because that's who he felt he needed to influence and change, and the only way he was going to do it is if he could get them to believe that he was
sure
like that.
Sure.
So, but my I go back even. We're probably a little different in age, and I like it. It even goes back a little further before it switched to right because early groups like Houdini
Yeah,
and,
sure.
and Grandmaster Flash, and although there was the message was a big record to me because that gave me insight to a life that I didn't know much about. So, some people will say like, oh, hip hop was like the CNN the CNN for people who didn't know what street life was and this and that. And I still grew up. White Plains is a very diverse suburb, right? It's a suburb. It's not the city. It's not Brooklyn, but it's a very diverse. Like in my school, there was everything. It's a melting pot of different ethnicities, and I grew up with all different types of friends. And I think God, I love my parents for that because you could be in the suburbs, and you could also just be in communities where it's just all white kids, all Italian kids, all Jewish kids.
Sure.
So White Plains is like big up White Plains. It's still like that today. You get a very diverse community there, and I think that becomes helpful because not only am I hearing the songs, but I also know different people in different situations. It could be in a house in White Plains, but they also have projects in White Plains, and they're putting all the kids in the same school. And we're having sleepovers, and the parents are allowing the intermingling. And imagine what those conversations were, right? Like, forget the political correctness. I'm just saying, imagine in the 70s what those conversations were like. Of like, hey, should we let him go over to to that project building and have a sleepover tonight? Like, we as the kids are just thinking that's my friend in school and that's where I'm going to go tonight. But I think the music was like the crossing line.
Sure, absolutely. It was a bridge.
Yeah.
Even think about like, and again, I use X with somebody that slipping. Let me tell you something. That song really made me look at my life. When I remember when it just came out, like where I needed to make a change. I wasn't a good person.
Right.
And also just of the kid, thinking I want to be better and I don't want to, get in trouble anymore, and I just want to change my life around. And I'm telling you, that song really stuck to me. Again, there's a lot of songs, like Phil Collins has songs that stuck to me, but music is so important.
Right.
Even staying on this topic, you think about how long you've been in the music business.
Right.
There's a lot of people. I remember hearing one time DJ Enough say, he loves music, but he hates the music industry.
Yeah, I think that happens to all of us as we go.
Are you burnt out by now?
I have my days, I have my time when I'm burnt out from the managing, the taking care of artists, the ask, the request. It's like, when you're a manager and you've been doing it for a long time, that shit is like, man, you could be a babysitter at times. Like you're doing tasks that you just think if you. You talk about spoiling, your parents spoiling you. What about like people in work? If you're constantly doing things for people and they don't learn how to do it for themselves, and you got your own life to live, and it's different as you're younger, and then your responsibilities change as you get older. Of course, like the burnout happens from that side of it. The politics of the business, always trying to have to reestablish your credibility or reestablish yourself when you're going to the DJs, or always trying to prove yourself in terms of the next record that you have, or it's a competitive business, right? Like what you're promoting is always what you're going up against everyone else with. So that part of it gets tiring. The rounds that you have to make on every single record can become repetitive, and it burns me out a little bit. But at the end of the day, when we make that right record, or I hear that right beat, or I see that right video, or even the right marketing campaign that we launched successfully, and I know how much goes behind it and how much thinking and strategy went into it, that sucks me back into it every time.
Even as you move, and evolved in your career over the years, you manage and, will sign, and I'll let you tell it, but Young M.A.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing, like, where she gave everybody, like, a plaque. And I thought that was a really dope. Is that
we brought it back with those plaques?
Yeah. Like, tell us about that. First of all, tell us how you met. Like the first time you met her.
Well, I'll first say this because if she ever heard this, she would hang me for it. But I would say we didn't sign Young M.A., right? You can't sign Young M.A. And that same thing was said to me by KRS. I didn't. The album we have with KRS is Buckshot and KRS-One have a full album together.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
Survival Skills.
Yeah.
So we didn't, again, right? Think about it. We didn't just like the record didn't just appear. It's like we had to go and make that deal with Chris, and then we had to make that record with him and go through photo shoots and video shoots and studio sessions. So I got to spend a lot of time with him, and that to me was like a dream come true, like as also huge KRS fan growing up. So to get to do a project like that. But I remember Buckshot went out and said in like a press interview, he said, yeah, we signed KRS. And Chris called me that night and he was like, "Yo, you don't sign. You don't sign KRS. Like nobody signs KRS. We're doing a project together. Like, and he basically had a, I knew it, but it wasn't the way that Buck presented it. You have to be careful with the words sometimes. But with MA, it was, she had music already being put out. She had videos, and this is way before the success of that record. She had a lot of mixtapes and different videos that were already up on YouTube. And we just went to her to say, like a lot of other labels, we went to her to say that we could help distribute the music and kind of consult her and help her through the business. And so we did a partnership with her where we, that's how we phrase it, where we distribute and market her music, and then we consult on the management side. So we're now we've evolved as part of the management team, but that's how we started. We were like consultants to the managers, and we handled the distribution and the marketing. And that was about 4 years ago. I saw a freestyle from her on, it was over the Chirac beat. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. I caught it when it was only at a couple of 100,000 views on YouTube. I saw a number. It was like a Saturday. I called the number at the, I clicked for more info. Got the guy on the phone. His name was Jason Williams. I hit Jason up. He was like, "Yo, bro, you're late." He's like, a lot of people are already calling. I was just, really asking him for a meeting. I was like, just come in and meet with me. Just come, like, I called Buck the next day. I was like, "Do you know these guys? Do you know anything about them?" Buck didn't know them. But I guess Jason did a little homework on us. And not only, Jason didn't really have to do that much homework because he was an older guy. He pretended like he didn't really know our history, but I know he did know our history.
Sure.
And I think that helped. Now, MA, she didn't really know too much about us. Her mom was a big fan of Black Moon, of Buckshot, and I think that also helped, like, soften her position a little bit. And what you see with MA, like in the music videos, maybe in interviews, things like that, it's kind of what you see is what she is as a person. There's no character for her. Like that's her. She's very soft-spoken. She's very humble. She's very one level. There's not like a lot of highs, not a lot of lows. So, when we got to meet her, we had to kind of like just figure out like how we could explain to her in a short amount of time, like how we could help. And it actually took us like 6 months of just going back and forth with their team, saying, look, there's a couple of things that we think we could do. And we did this distribution deal where we're saying, just give us a chance to kind of organize things and get it going. And I remember Buckshot was going up to see Flex for something else, and we said to Buck, bring her with you. We hadn't done the deal yet, and we knew it was a little risky because all the ones that I've lost in the past.
Yeah.
I was like, I do not want to lose her, but I was like, fuck it, let's just show her some, let's introduce her to Flex. And I'll also send you that link because it's pretty remarkable to go back and see it. Flex was there for Buck, or Flex thought this was a Buckshot interview, and it turned into a Young M.A. holy shit moment for Flex. Like, he was just like, yo, where you been hiding? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And, we took a little gamble there by bringing her up there because we're putting her on the airwaves. But those little steps that we were able to take to kind of show her some of the things that we could do to add on to what she was already doing is kind of like what led to the relationship. So
yeah, and I recently just seen you put up a post, and it's like, obviously you're a pure guy. I know you for a while, and, of how it's been 4 years that you've been part of that team of, managing and consulting and partnership and what a person she is. And, really, to be honest with you, you could tell the pureness of when someone posts. I really believe in that. Social media sometimes...
I agree.
Sometimes people rather look good than be good, but there's certain people that I think you could feel the passion right off the jump.
I said that to Static hit me this morning, or like late last night. He sent me.
Shouts to Static.
Yeah, he sent me a text like 2 a.m.
Another Duck Down alumni.
Yeah, he hasn't graduated yet because he's still rocking with us. Yeah. We put out like 7 albums with Static, but he texted me like 2 a.m. last night. I wasn't up, but I read it this morning, and it was a text from Nipsey to Static, or Static might have started it, and Static was telling Nipsey, like, yo, I got to get you on this album. I'm putting it out through Duck Down. And when I read shit like that, he literally sent me the screenshot. And I always think, like, sometimes you lose track of where you are in this business. I'm like, would Nipsey know what Duck Down is? Like, would he? You know, I've never spoken to him, and Static asked me, had I ever met him, and I said, you know, it's strange. Like, it's 6 degrees in this business. Like, I know so many people that were close to him, and that worked closely with him. But I never had I've met him before, but never in like a meaningful manner, like where we ever had a real conversation. But I said, it's truly amazing to me, like the posts and everything that I'm seeing, because to you know, just bringing it back to your point of like, anytime I saw all the posts like down the timeline, it always seemed very genuine in terms of like the relationships that he had. It wasn't just like, oh, here's a picture of me and you know, DJ Clue, or me and. I know it's not him obviously posting it, but it's all the people that are posting it for him. And from looking at the pictures the same way, I could feel like, damn, that's one guy that I didn't get to meet, in a meaningful way. But the genuineness just kind of like comes through the gram, you know, in a way that you can tell sometimes. So I'm sorry to go off track that way.
No.
It kind of led there.
You know, so it's been good to see, you know, her, you know, when you think about Young M.A. and how many people being around a song mispronounce her name. Like,
oh, yeah, everyone, at first it's always Young. Not anymore, because now it's kind of been out there for a minute.
Yeah. But, you know, you think about, like, you know, how, you know, she had that hit song, you know, and then has been able to bubble. And I think there's so much more left of what she's able to do. So it's good to see that, you know.
I get a lot of... And I know she gets it. We get a lot of hate, and I even.
Why do you think that for?
Well, one, what she is. Okay, so there's still a lot of people that are not accepting of that. It's hard for us to understand that, because I think in hip hop we are so encompassing that we, you know, especially as like, well, for me, especially as a white person in hip hop early on, it was like, you know, there weren't as many white people in the game when I first started. There were on the music side, on the industry side there were, but not so much on the manager sides or the rappers or things like that. So I know what it's like to automatically, you know, feel like there's a group of people that don't want you to be a part of it.
Sure.
So maybe in the realm of like what her sexuality is, there's just certain people that still cannot come to accept it for what it is. And then they feel threatened by it because she is a female, she is lesbian, and she's nasty. You know, she's nice with it. A lot of people, like, the comments I get are just like, I got one today where a dude was like, Dru, I can't believe you. You could look at it after we're done. Like, this isn't what you built your reputation and your, you know, like, this is what you built your system on. And I'm not normally one to engage, but I kind of like fired right back at that guy, and I said, I don't know, to me, she has all the characteristics that I look for in an MC, which is cleverness, wittiness, lyricism. Like, to me, she spits incredibly like some of the best and greats that I've been blessed to work with. A lot of Duck Down fanatics, they want to keep the sound, right? We go back to minors versus majors. They want to keep the sound in pocket where it was. But this is the one that shuts it all down. Sean Price, for all the Duck Down fans, because it always will start, like, no matter what they like on Duck Down, Sean is going to be Duck Down's favorite. And Sean has been on record many, many times in interviews, on video, saying that he didn't fuck with any female MCs, right? It didn't matter. You could name in the interviews.
Yeah,
you know,
I remember we used to argue with him back in when the combat just started about.
Could you see the classic Sean face?
Yeah.
Like, if he didn't have something nice to say, he would just make that face.
Yeah.
Like, and we had a show at BB King's. It was Black Moon and Mobb Deep at BB King's. This is maybe 2015. And again, we already knew that we were aligning up to work with her. And Sean was at the show. He wasn't performing that night. And we brought Young M.A. out on that set that night. Buckshot brought her out. And she went for broke. She did Chirac. She did the record. And the crowd, like, you know, she won the crowd over. And Sean just, like, I remember he grabbed me. He put his arm around me, like his big-ass paw around me. He was like, yo, she's dope. Like, he was like, she's dope. He's like, that's a good look right there. Like, and Sean Price, you know, and Bernadette, you can ask Bern as well. Sure. Like, this isn't for me, but this is just to shut the Duck Down haters up that sometimes don't want to see it go anywhere. Like, you know, Sean, fuck with her. And I don't care, like, anyway. I don't care if Sean did or didn't. I fuck with her. Like, I saw it in a way that I thought she reminded me of a throwback MC, but of a newer era. Like, the era and the times change. We can't stop that shit. You know, like, you can love and appreciate the golden age and the golden times and whatever artists are your favorites, but you can't stop the evolution of it. And if you don't figure it out, and if you don't stop and listen and try to understand why the kids of today like it, we sound like the old motherfuckers of our parents who didn't like hip hop.
Sure. And it's gonna pass you right by.
Right. So remember it was like, what's hip hop? What's that? Now it's more. It's not about what's hip hop. It's just now we're the old people that are going, well, why do you like that artist? It's still a hip hop artist. Maybe we can get into the whole debate about it's branched off into so many different, genres of it. But at the end of the day, it's still hip hop. So, for me, I've tried to keep an open mind and an open ear. I've learned that, like I said, I said it earlier in our conversation, that I kind of learned that from Sean, of the reinvention. Sure. Like, it's okay to let go. It's okay to do something else. Sean started going out on tour or doing features with a lot of groups that I wasn't really listening to, like Jedi Mind Tricks.
Yeah.
I can name a bunch. He just started listening to shit that I was like, you're listening to this? Like, and all due respect, because then I started to listen to it, and I would start to understand like why he liked the MC. I had to do a little more homework. It didn't come as easily to me to understand. Like, maybe the beat didn't hit me the same way, but then he was showing me like, yo, there's other shit out there. Listen, really go and try to understand what it is. So I don't think that with MA that conversation's even necessary. Like, I feel like if you're from New York, especially if you're from Brooklyn, how fuck that, just New York, and like you listen to her freestyles or you listen to certain records, not Petty Wap, although those were great records, forget the big radio records, but just she's got literally hundreds of songs up on YouTube. Go listen to them, and you don't hear the lyricism, or you don't hear, the cleverness to how she's saying it and how she's spinning it, then I don't know, we're listening to two different things.
I guess so. What about Joey Badass? Is he still? Wasn't he signed to Duck Down Management?
No. So Joey,
it's like he came out of.
We tried real tough to get Joey. Joey was signed to Cinematic, right?
Yeah.
So I
which you're at, right?
Right. I have I'm general management of Cinematic in a consulting role and work with that company. I've been working with them for 5 years, and that's where it started because. The dudes from Creative Control, they're a video production company. Yep. They showed me a video of Joey. They had just directed the one with him and Capital Steez, the first one. I can't. Joey would kill me if I forgot the name, whatever. But they showed me the video, and I was like, damn, that looks like looks and sounds like some young boot camp click shit. Like, if I had ever seen it, it was that. Like, I felt like...
The bucket hat, the way he dressed, the fatigue stuff. I remember seeing that when he came up. Yeah.
But not in a way where I'm like, ew. Like, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you can have the look and the appearance, and it's like, yo, you're trying way too hard. Like, you're just trying to do that.
Sure.
Joey was just like...
very natural.
And it was an evolution. Again, I use that word. It was a evolution of that, right? It was like it was birthed from that, but it evolved into where he's taking it now for young people. And that record was and video, I saw it and I was like, damn, I would love to meet him. What's the deal? He's like, oh, he's signed to a company called Cinematic, or he's being managed by Jonny Shipes. And so I hit up Johnny, and I'd only met Johnny once. He had brought Big Crit by Cornerstone, where I also worked for 10 years. I was like a music supervisor for them. I've worn so many hats in this shit. But I called Johnny.
Fucking Dru Ha got 8 jobs, bro.
Yeah, I did.
You work for the sanitation department too?
Some of the shit that I got to clean up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hit Johnny, and we set up a meeting, and he was like, you like him, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah. And he said, all right, well, here's the deal. He's like, you can do this deal, but you also got to do a Pro Era album. Pro Era was Joey's.
Sure.
That would be like Buckshot to Boot Camp. So I said, okay. To me, that was like another win. Like, all right, we're going to get both. And same thing, we started out with an offer to Cinematic, and we kind of went back and forth. And for a while, it got quiet for a minute. I was going strong after it. It wasn't quiet on my part. I learned my lesson. But Johnny was in the midst of setting up his own. Like, someone got to Johnny in terms of the business, and they were like, you should set up your own company. And instead of going to Duck Down or somewhere else, you should, start your own independent label. And he ended up doing that through Red, which turned into The Orchard, or is The Orchard today. And he did the deal, and he hit me up, and stand-up dude, he hit me up and he told me, he said, look, we really were going to do this deal with you, but someone just linked me up and they got me an independent deal at Red, and I want to build it like how you built Duck Down. And he said, you know what? They recommended, and I know that, maybe this is something you can help me with. And I was like, fuck it. If I can't be involved and it can't be on Duck Down, then I said, you know what? That is something maybe different I could try. And so we got involved very early with Cinematic. I was very fortunate to meet Joey at that very beginning stage. I was a huge fan of his, so I had like that fan crush on him, and that makes me work harder. When I really like something, I rolled up my sleeves and I was able to put some deals together for him at Cornerstone. I helped put that deal together with DJ Premier and Joey, where they made that first record for Green Label Sound, which was on Mountain Dew. And so we came right in the beginning of that career. We came in with like a brand partner, and we did some really cool things to really set off Joey's like early works. And then that led to like a deeper relationship with Cinematic. And as we got the ball rolling there, Jonny and we just kept growing. Like, he brought in more and more acts. Like, Johnny's a beast. He has an incredible A&R ear, and he had a lot of things lined up. He also is very motivated. He's very driven. Like, there's no stopping that guy. So
I like the logo.
Yeah, and the logo's cool.
And I also am starting to hear more and more about Cinematic. So it's good to see. It's good to see that.
Yeah, he had Mick Jenkins. He had obviously Joey and he had Big Crit, and he had G Herbo, and it was like a lot of things that were exciting. So our roles grew there, and to this day, it's still a part of it. Part of that team is like, man, we managed T-Pain. Nobody would even know that, but we just put a T-Pain record out a couple weeks ago. We did a show he did a show at what's Sony? Is it Sony Theater now?
Sony Music Hall.
Yeah, Sony Music Hall. He sold it out. We helped set up a deal for him on Fox, where he was the Masked Singer. I don't know if you caught any of that. He won the show. It was on network. Nick Cannon was the host, and they were singing behind masks, and then he ended up winning that. So it, again, for me, it's just like kind of just broadened my whole spectrum of the things that I'm involved with and get to do. How
many people have been on Duck Down, man? I mean, Torre, shouts to Torre, shouts to Sky Zoo.
Yeah, Rusty Jukes.
Shit,
we got an album with Be Real from Cypress Hill.
Really?
Yeah, man. We put out Be Real's
Static Selector?
Static put out like 7.
You said you put out Be Real what?
We put out Be Real's first solo album.
Nice.
Yeah. And I still talk to B to this day.
Yeah, he's killing it with the Dr. Green Thumb. Yeah. He's got his own...
that was an honor, man.
Yeah.
Like the KRS album was an honor. We did a whole album with Pete Rock.
And Ninth Wonder, right?
And then we developed the Ninth Wonder relationship. We probably have done
one of my favorite songs with him and Sean Price is... Ninth Wonder and Sean Price song is...
See how our memories are getting so...
Are you crazy that I might remember this?
Heartburn?
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That shit, whenever I hear that shit, it makes me really almost shed a tear of how much I miss P.
It's crazy.
Look, man... Your journey is crazy, man. You've been in the music industry. You've been around for so long. What's the future for artists? Like, what's the future in the music business? What's the future for the artists, from your opinion?
Well, the future for artists is that they are able more than ever to do it themselves. So, they're able to get it started. And I think that for record labels, it's evolving not to just be a record label, but to be more of, more encompassing. Like, if you can be a good manager, if you can help with getting licenses, if you can help with press, can you be a good publicist? Do you know DJs? Can you, start to introduce people and accelerate the story that a lot of the artists that we're discovering today have already achieved a certain level of accomplishment, right? We're all looking at artists that have, most of the time you're finding artists that have some type of following on the socials or some type of views on YouTube. That means they're doing it first on their own. We're all kind of a little late by the time we get to it. So, I think the future remains like the distribution chain has totally changed. You can go and put your music up through TuneCore. You could go and get a distribution deal so much easier than you could back in the day. For the record labels, for people like what I do, it's more of assembling good teams of people that can kind of assist an artist versus rather saying like that you can make an artist.
So are you looking for artists?
I'm always looking. Yeah. I'm looking on YouTube. I'm looking on the gram. I'm always looking.
Popping up in clubs or
not as much
shows?
Not as much.
Okay.
Me and Sean had a good joke.
You got a P-coat on in the back on your Lee Arco and shit?
Sean used to tease me about that shit too. He'd say I was on. He would he would kind of like joke me about where I would. He was like, "Oh, you go into the hood to look for some new talent." Like he would fuck with me that way.
Yeah.
Like, no, you damn sure no, you're not doing that. But yeah, people bring you things. Some people reach out directly. I slow down a whole lot in terms of what we take on. Some companies are built on volume, and that's a new model for a lot of companies. Like Empire is a great example of that, where they took on a lot of things and they swung the bat a lot of times. And then if you get some hits along the way,
Sure. It's a win.
Cinematic is very much like that. They sign a lot of artists. Not to say that it's not quality, but there is a lot of quantity. They're very aggressive in what they go after. I think for Duck Down, we're a little more selective because we are still independent to this day. There's no investor. There's no one behind us. No.
So it's still just you and Buckshot?
Yeah, still.
How
it's
have
me
you
and Buck.
stayed together for so fucking long? Was it 20 plus years?
You know, that relationship has changed over the years too. It's just like we've kind of fallen back into the roles that we're best at. You know?
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. All of those relationships. Smith & Wesson, we just put out a new album from them with
Shouts
produced
to
by
Tech and
911.
Steel. I gotta have them up here too.
Yeah. We never had contracts, man. We really
Handshakes?
We had handshakes and you know, it's crazy. I more recently with the newer works, we contract them because it's like we have to define
Sure.
the
What are you gonna
percentage.
do?
Yeah, but it's like in the beginning there never were contracts. They never like. If Sean Price didn't want you to manage him, I don't care what piece of fucking paper I had.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to matter. It wouldn't be like, Sean, I'm your manager. Like,
They'll smack the shit out of you.
right? The fuck, you know? Like if you don't, that's not me. I'm not some. I am on the ground that way. I am still going to the interviews and the radio shows.
You know, I see you all over in shows. I see you in you know.
I try to. You know, I try. I'm more tired than I used to be.
Yeah.
And I don't have the bandwidth.
Well, you have a kid now.
Yeah, I have a kid now, and so I'm probably more selective, and I know that each artist is still going to require a whole lot of time, and to do it, there's a lot of hand holding in the beginning, you know, and you got to be
in management.
And the management side.
You know, I remember when a couple of people told me, I know a bunch of different managers as well, but I remember like Steve LaBelle telling me something that really stuck
Big up,
with
Steve.
me. You know, he told me, he's like, yo, I never knew a manager. I never knew how to be a loan shark and a babysitter and a therapist and I forgot what he said, but it was like
all those things.
Yeah, and he said I never knew I was signing up for all of this.
Right.
You know, even like, and I know managers that are taking care of child support payments for 2 different, mothers or 3 different, like meaning like I didn't sign up for this
right.
to make this paperwork, but it's you really like you said it before. It's like almost like we're being babysitting. But at the end of the day, I think when you have a project or, that you're working on or an artist that you're working on and you see it come to life, it's worth it. You know?
Man. And I say it's like an honor. I wrote that to MA in the post today, and I said it's an honor and a privilege. And I didn't want it to sound corny, but I was thinking it to myself. And I'm thinking we talked about her haters, right? But we also talk about how many people fucking love her and do acknowledge that, the artist that she is. And then I always thought about that with Sean. I always thought about that, like I said, being in the studio with Pete Rock or being in the studio with Be Real or whatever it is, Buckshot for all those years. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to be that close and to watch it. It's like having courtside seats at a game or being the coach. Not even the courtside seats. It's like being the coach of a team.
Yeah.
And you get all access. And there's a lot of headaches that come with it, but if you love what you're doing and you love the music, then every night that he has a game and he's getting to sit down and be in the locker room and those are the rewards, and I still enjoy that side of it.
You got your brother in the business as well.
Yeah.
So you love the business so much, you got your fucking whole family in there.
Yeah.
I don't
know if that was the best. No, Sean used to always tell Noah to not come into, because he knew him from when he was like 8, 9 years old. And he was, Noah, stay the fuck away from your brother. Like, imagine how Sean would say it.
Sure. He's very, very convincing. Too.
Yeah, Sean, don't go in this fucking rap shit. Like, he used to always say that to Noah. But Noah is basically the general manager of Duck Down. He's also a partner of mine in a company we have called DNF. And that's another company that we have set up that's a distribution company. The first artist that we signed on that company is an artist named Jay the Youngin. I never get to talk about him because no one would even dare to even ask me about him. But Jay the Youngin is 20 years old. He's from Bogalusa, Louisiana. And right now he's streaming like more music than anything on my catalog, like anything put together. He just does like massive numbers through his YouTube, through Spotify and SoundCloud and all those things. So it was another one that we partnered on with Jonny, and we were able to like kind of remove ourselves from what we would normally and typically do and just operate from the background, but still have a successful business out of it. And, you know, Noah runs that ship. Like it's not an easy job, but he runs it.
What's next for Dru Ha? You know, obviously you're up at Cinematic with Jonny Shipes.
Yeah.
And what they're doing over there. I like that. I know there's a couple. Again, like I said, I like what they're doing. I know the kid Busy that was
Big up
works.
Busy.
I like Busy.
Big up Hovain.
Hovain. The Sav. It was a Sav.
Chris Hirsch. Sav. We put like a nice team together up there.
It's like fucking.
It's big.
Like a mafia team over there.
There's big things happening up there.
Yeah.
So I'd say Cinematic is
Cinematic. Duck Down Management still going.
Duck Down Music. You know, the record label, we're still putting out music. You know, I just said we just put out the Smith & Wesson the 9th record. We'll be selective and look at different things that we want to put out. We've got more Sean Price projects coming. You know, I don't know.
Any more kids?
I don't think so. I think wifey said that's it.
Okay.
I would have another one.
One and done?
She said that. Well, I told you also that we watch her niece, so I've got a 16-year-old at my house.
Yeah.
I feel like I put my time in.
Sure, it's like a kid. It's like your own kid.
Yeah.
You know.
And then all these kids that I've watched over all these years, like I always say that, like, you know, it's like you're a manager to all these artists. There's some parenting that translates.
That's crazy. Listen, on IG, Dru Ha, straight up,
just DRUHA.
That was available when you went and got it.
I got it early, man.
Okay. And Twitter, you still fuck with Twitter?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as Dru Ha. I don't do it enough.
Hit him up, but don't try to send him a CD. You know what I mean? Okay. Don't try to send him a CD. You know, sometimes you go to A3C or some of these festivals, people still want to hand you CDs.
Yo, man, no fucking hand me. I've told people stop giving me CDs a couple years ago. Like, you can't send me a link. Like, fuck out of here with a zip drive. Sean used to do that too. I don't know if we're out of time, but Sean used to. He would go once in a while. He would go on Twitter rampages and he would tell people Dru said he's looking for beats. Dru said he's looking for new artists, and I would just get flooded. And then he would laugh, and you know his day would go on, and my timeline would be like, yo, I got beats.
I miss Sean Price on Twitter, man. In general, listen. Well, first of all, I want to say this. You know, thank you. And I always say there's a lot of people who their journey is this hip hop is a whole puzzle, and you're a piece of the puzzle. Just like a lot of people have pieces, you're a piece of the puzzle. What Duck Down has done, what you have done, but more importantly, I would say this too. When you think about like just the person you are and the relationships you have and the long-standing, you know, you think about even when you pops, you know, and I'm sure he's looking down proud. Mm-hmm. You know, you ran the marathon for him, raised a bunch of money for him. You know, like there's just a lot of passion with what you're doing. I'm proud to have seen it.
Oh, man, you know, thank you.
Wish you all the best, man. So we'll talk soon, and I'm glad we're finally able to get this done. Internets, when you see this group picture, okay, we're not twins, we're not brothers. He's Jewish, I'm Italian, okay? But he's definitely family.
That's right.
Dru Ha,
well
Duck Down Music. CHEA!
Internets, if you enjoyed that episode, then hit me up. That's right, email me at thepremiumpeteshow@gmail.com. Again, that's thepremiumpeteshow@gmail.com. If you're an advertiser, any big company, small company, startup, whatever it is, you want to advertise on the Premium Peep Show, hit me up. Email thepremiumpeteshow@gmail.com, and we'll get to working, okay? And if you have a suggestion or you want to hear a certain guest on the show, whatever it is, okay? You know, you could at Premium Pete Show on Twitter or Instagram, or for the last time I'll tell you, well, I'm not gonna. It's not the last time. Email me. thepremiumpeteshow@gmail.com, and let's get to working. CHEA!